Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the All Portable Discussion Zone, a bi-weekly live stream all about amateur radio portable ops. My name is Charlie. Call sign is November Juliet 7 Victor, and with me this evening is one of the two co-hosts of the show, Dan, KC7MSU.
Good evening.
Yeah, and I don't know what happened to Brian. He's around somewhere, but he's unpredictable sometimes. And then also, I'm pleased to introduce to you tonight's guest, Vince, VE6LK or AI7LK. Welcome, Vince.
Hey, thanks for having me. Welcome, everybody else.
Yep. And of course, as always, we have all these fine, stellar individuals in the chat room. If you have a comment or a question, go ahead and throw that in the chat, and we'll be sure to answer it if we can. And also, don't forget, we have a podcast that this is converted into after the show, about 24 hours. I put it up there. Most podcast players you'll be able to find it. And so with that, let's get going and get around the room and see what everybody's been up to the last little bit. I would like to mention this is season number 3, episode 1. We've had this is our anniversary, so to speak, of doing live streams. This is year number 3 we're starting. I started live streaming October 3rd, I think, of 2020. So happy to have another season underway and for Vince to be our guest. I'm going to just go ahead and start it off. Of course, we had a really huge event that we have every year here in Arizona called a 10-Point Madness Summit to Summit event. And actually, Dan and Vince both participated in that as well. I'd be interested to hear what they have to say. But that's so for the last couple of weeks, I really have just been kind of focusing on getting some stuff done around the house. I didn't get out a lot in the last 2 weeks, except for this weekend. And so I think I had maybe one other activation up in Flagstaff. But anyway, so this Summit to Summit event up in Aztec Peak is where I went. It's kind of a remote area in the Sierra Anchas. And I mean, I had a great time. I had quite a few QSOs. Actually was able to work some people that I'd been wanting to for a long time get in the books, including Vince. I also had Malin, Summit to Summit, who's a good friend of mine, and Thomas Witherspoon. Of course, I called him Tim.
I saw that.
And he seems okay with that.
Yeah, it was on. If you don't follow us on Twitter, that's where that comment came through. But anyway, let me turn it over to Dan and see what he's been up to.
Well, worked the 10-Point Madness event yesterday. Had a great time. Made a few QSOs up there, and really enjoyed getting out onto a peak. And I got to spend about good 5 or 6 hours up there. Got a few picks as well, so we'll go through those a little bit later. But it was a great time, and right now just kind of also getting ready for the Arizona QSO party next weekend.
Oh, that's right. The QSO party is coming up next weekend. I forgot about that. My wife and I will be up in the Sholo area doing summits on the air, so we'll miss it. But all right, Vince, what about you?
Oh, I mean, where to start? I've had a great summer. We've returned to being able to go out glamping. My wife and the dog and I. We haven't been able to for the last couple of years, so it's been great to get out. And I heard about this thing called POTA. And so, a few of us, a couple of YouTubers, and a few of us from the podcasting world were asked to present awards to it. And I was thinking to myself, well, there must be something behind this POTA. They're doing awards. It must be kind of a thing. And honestly, I really didn't know. So I took it upon myself to learn about POTA. And I've been going out and activating parks, and I've been having a hoot doing it. So I just came back from another park not far from home just a few hours ago that had never been activated. I can't believe there's so many that are close to me. And just this last Friday, a dear friend and I, we went into backcountry and we started at the highest road crossing in Canada. We turned around. We couldn't find a place to park because it was so popular with hikers. But we started working our way back on the map through this string of parks that have never been activated. And we had a howl of a time. We had a fellow with us who's returning to India, who's going to do some activations while he's there. And he wanted to come out and see how to do an activation. And I said, well, we're about as green as it gets, but you're welcome to come out. We had a great time. So that's what I've been up to.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, so those of you who may be living under a rock and don't know, Vince is one of the co-hosts on the Ham Radio Workbench podcast, and he appears there quite a bit. Well, it doesn't appear. You listen to him there, but you don't actually see him. Oh, actually, right? You do live now, right, on the YouTube.
We do some live streams from time to time. We always will for QSO Today, Ham Expo. And every once in a while, you will find that I will post something on my fledgling YouTube channel that needs better graphics and a better intro than it's got.
How do people find that?
You look for my name, Vince VE6LK. Eventually, when YouTube gets their stuff in a collective, that's a polite way of saying it, I will be able to get my personalized URL.
Oh,
so
good. Yeah.
Stay tuned. Follow me on Twitter, and you'll find out when that happens.
Nice.
Hey, somebody else arrived to the party.
Yeah, Brian. We just barely went around. Dan and I Vince just told us told the group what we've been up to. What about you? What's been going on? Can I put you on the spot, or do we need to?
Sure. Well, let's see. Let's do a quick recap. The reason why I was 3 to 4 minutes late was I had a little failure with the built-in microwave, and I was in the process of putting it back in the wall, and it was in the middle. Anyway, I under budgeted on time, and I was in a situation where I could not take my hands away to come in here and play. But I did fix my microwave, and it only cost $10, so that's okay. So anyway,
congratulations on that.
Yeah, microwave switch. There's a little switch in the door on a GE Profile microwave, and when it goes bad, it causes the circuit breaker to trip. You can buy the switch for $5, and that's it. Real simple to do. Anyway, so microwave fixed. That's what I was up to just before now. Not exactly ham, but
But it's the knack.
A little building, little troubleshooting, a little figuring stuff out. Anyway, so we did that. We had the S2S Madness yesterday, which was a blast. Had a lot of fun up on Towers Mountain.
How'd you do?
I did pretty well. I had 60 contacts, I think. Yeah, just over 60 contacts, mostly CW. I did plug the microphone in for a little bit on HF, which for me is unusual. Worked two Canadian stations, a VE6 and a VE7. Both of them were on summits, so they were summit to summit. So that was a good time right there. For the Arizona guys, there's going to be some changes to the access to Towers Mountain, and I'll talk about those offline with the Arizona guys. But the person that owns the right of way that goes up to the top is pretty much fed up with and done with the side by sides. So he is going to be gating that road. But he likes the Ham Radio guys, so we will have access, and I'll discuss all that offline because I don't want to broadcast all that information on here.
Okay.
So anyway, that's going to be changing in the next couple months, and they're working. The road, by the way, going up there is 100% horrible than it was in the last couple of times. It's really bad, like high clearance 4-wheel drive all the way now.
You did tell him to go ahead and fix the road so I can get my truck up there, right?
Actually, that's in the works. They had a quote for $18,000 to repair the road from the roundhouse in Crown King, which is kind of like that last house that you get to, all the way up to the top. And they're going to regrade it, and they're going to do regular maintenance on it.
Might be cheaper to buy a new truck or lockers for yours, Dan. Just saying.
I was 45 minutes late getting radioactive up there because I was chatting with the guy. Very nice man, but I figured it was good PR for all of us that like going there to talk to him. He's been living up there for 60 years, so he knows the area really well.
He knows stuff. Yeah. All right.
He knows stuff. So anyway, that was yesterday, and that's about it, man. I just been keeping busy and ham stuff and fixing things and on and on and on and on and on. All life is good.
All right. Well, congratulations to everybody for a stellar weekend. It sounds like everybody was out hamming and doing good and carrying forth the Ham Radio torch. So let's go ahead though. We got to get into our guest here and get some questions about with Vince and see who he is and a little bit about him. So first thing I wanted to do, Vince, is ask you just a little bit, just to tell the group a little bit about yourself, because we may have some viewers that may not know who you are. So just tell us a little bit about who you are.
I imagine that's all but 3 of them. And so I'm this guy who way too many years ago got hooked on ham radio by my father's cousin. We called him Uncle Al. And that was at age 7. And my brother and I both got hooked on shortwave radio at the same time. I got more hooked on transmitting. My brother probably still likes more to listen than he does to talk. But at age 18, I took half of the exam in Canada, and the other half was 7 words a minute Morse code. You'll hear about my Morse code trials and tribulations in a bit. Charlie experienced it firsthand yesterday. He took it like a trooper. Well, the theory was easy, but the Morse code was difficult, and I was 18 and other things were more interesting to me at that time. And fast wind the tape forward to age 40, about 20 years ago. And here I am sitting in a classroom writing all of the exams, finally getting it complete. So we can't say that I don't eventually complete something. And so I have just found a few things. As I say to people when they sit in an exam session with me, congratulations, welcome to Ham Radio. You now have a license to learn. And I mean that very sincerely, because you never stop learning if you try, or if you're trying different things, because the other half of this is it's a hobby of 1,000 hobbies. And I find myself slowly working my way through a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
So,
couldn't agree more.
In 2013, we got the call. In 2005, we got a call to help out with a high water event in the city of Calgary and south of the city of Calgary. I was living in Calgary at the time. I live south of there now. And I helped out for 24 hours continuously over the course of 2 events. And the next time we got the call was in 2013, and most of southern Alberta was getting inundated with massive amounts of rain. I landed up being, I still say it's quite by accident, the lead emergency ham radio operator for the event for the area of High River in southern Alberta. And it really, I felt like I was living inside a movie set, because so many things were going on at once. Helicopters landing around me, Canadian military, political dignitaries, all of these things were around me in the Emergency Operations Center. But it really cemented for me many things about emergency communications and personal readiness and personal preparedness. One of my radio volunteers, she's dietarily restricted, and she shows up with a duffel bag full of food, and this gal can cook, and there are these wonderful cookies in it. There's all the stuff that she needs to be totally self-sufficient for 72 hours. And I got a real eye-opener as to how poorly I was equipped at that time to respond. We pulled it off. We did great. We helped the town out when they needed it. But anyway, that one event for me was really a watershed moment. And so now I find myself today continually honing my kit on the messy workbench you see over my shoulder, so that it can do what I need it to. I talk to people today about how to design a Go kit, and there's no right and wrong with a kit. And kits can be luggable. They can be in a suitcase like mine, in a Pelican case. They can be in a one-handed bag. As Wade VA3 NCA equipped, they could be pallets on the air if you carry too much gear, instead of parks on the air. That was great when he said that. They can be all kinds of things. So just in the last week, I have retooled my kit because I didn't like the way it was laid out. The ergonomics were no longer working for me with what I wanted to do. Things change. Anyway, there's cool. That's a story from long ago in a land far away to today.
Yeah. Well, you have a lot of interests. We ought to probably hit on each of them just a little bit, right? And just to get to know you a little bit. So while you brought up the emergency preparedness and the MCOM stuff, can you talk a little bit more about, obviously the Go kit, and what kind of maybe help others understand how important that is and how to maybe get started with that, and then some of the other MCOM stuff you're involved in.
Sure, real good. So, let me give a thumbnail sketch of what Go kit design looks like. So first off, in my personal life, I'm an IT project manager in healthcare, and my world is about building checklists, building processes, building repeatable processes through the excellent work of the teams I'm assigned to do the job at hand. And as a result, we have to understand what the customer needs, what the customer requires. It's the same approach I take, by the way, when I'm in front of you at the candy store. What do you need? How much budget do you have? What are you going to do with the product, et cetera, right? So let's take a look at requirements with respect to Go kit. Where are you going to use it? Are you going to strap it on your back? Are you going to have a team of guys to hump it up the hill for you? Are you going to do what Vince? I don't go up the hill, by the way, Charlie. You might not know this about me, but I'm in shape. My shape is round. That shape does not easily lend itself to going and doing summits on the air. So Parks on the Air is perfect for me because I can drive up to it, right? So my needs might not be yours. So let's define what needs are. Let's define how big you want it to be. This is not a question about gear. This is about how big the gear is. Let's define how you're going to power it, how long you need to power it for, and think about how we're going to do all of those things. Think about the elements you need to do those things. And then the next thing we need to think about is how much are you willing to personally hump around? I'm a guy with a bad back. I hate to say that out loud, but sad but true. And that means everything for me has to be carryable by one arm or two arms, but not real heavy. So all of those things are my limiting factors, and they are my requirements. Yours are going to be very different.
And let me just interject here real quick, Vince, because
Please.
What you say there, that's huge, even especially for portable ops, not just portable ops, but for those of who are interested in starting summits on the air or parks on the air. We have a guest in the chat, Doug V in there. He's been talking to me. I haven't really talked to him a whole lot yet, but he has these packs that he's trying to figure out how to pack them. And this is at the crux of the issue everybody faces, and that they need to figure out is what is it for you, and you need to just you need to build it for you. Yeah,
absolutely. And so when you think about building it for you, there's you need to tick off a list of things. How much power does it need? How much are you willing to carry? What are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? For me, my goals are very different than everybody else's, and that's okay. For me, when I'm doing MCOM work or when I'm net control at motorsport, at rally sport, for me, the message must get through. So for me, that means redundancy. As the military say, 2 is 1 and 1 is none. My complete Go kit has 2 transmitters. And one of them is and I can listen to 3 VFOs on VHF or UHF with those 2 transmitters. So if one of them fails, I just fall to the backup. Oh, by the way, if I need a break, we have another operator who's similarly equipped. And we in Western Canada, we use 2 operators to do net control for rally. So all of those things are design points for me. My pack is usually plugged into mains power. My pack is, if I'm glamping, I have a little tiny camping unit. It's only 40 feet long. Well, it goes with my shape, I guess. And so I'm usually plugged into power. And when I'm not, the rig is equipped with 700 watts of solar, and I can be off grid and 500 amp hour battery and an inverter and all of those things, right? So I think about the design of my kit for where I'm going to use it, how I'm going to use it, how long I need to use it, and how comfortable I am with its ergonomics and layout. I want, in my requirement is to replicate in my kit the setup that I have at home as much as possible. I don't mean the same gear, but I mean the same level of functionality, to the point where I carry a Windows, a Panasonic Toughbook running Windows 7. Don't send me letters. I like Windows 7. Panasonic Toughbook running Windows 7 and all my radio software, because that's what I run at home.
Yeah.
So, that's the basics of Go Kit. If people want to get into the detail of, the whole Go Kit thing, go find me on YouTube or through my website, b6lk.com. And there's a presentation link to the Go Kit presentation I've given.
Cool.
So
let's pause just a minute and get some chat comments and questions here. And then also give Dan and Brian a chance to interject and see if they have anything else they want to add before we move on to the next topic. So we have, you might have seen this pop up just a minute ago. Was that it? That wasn't it. It's right here. Portable is very different for different operators. So he was agreeing with what we had to say about that. That's Jeeping Mike, KB7THL. Welcome, Mike. And then do you know Fred Hewells?
Yeah, I do. Fred and I have traded a number of emails. Nice to see him here.
Okay, good. And then, of course, we have yet to hear from our troublemaker, Kyle, AA0Z, but he says he has a whole lot of absurd questions for you coming up, so we'll see about that.
I will have equally absurd answers for him when he does.
Okay, Dan, do you have anything at this time?
Yeah, I like the comment that everybody's been talking about, that, everybody's needs are very, very different. And if a radio or a radio setup doesn't work for that particular person, and they're the ones operating it, you've kind of missed out. You need to tailor everything you do for how you plan to operate. I mean, case in point, this weekend on the Summit event, I wanted to take my laptop. Well, I don't typically take my laptop on a summit, and I decided, well, I need some AC power just to plug it in, just in case the battery starts to run low. And I don't have any kind of I've got batteries, but I don't have any way to convert it, right? So
Yeah.
that's something that's now on my list for next year if I want to take a laptop, just to make sure that I can stay powered up the entire time.
Yep.
All right, Brian.
Yeah, for me, I think the main thing with Go kits is, I'm impressed with some of them when I see the way they're built up, and then some of them look, I go, man, how the heck are you going to carry that thing? Because some of them, I mean, they're impressive looking, but Jesus, I'm like, I need a forklift.
Well, unless you're operating from the back of your truck, then
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and some of them are real pretty, and some are pretty ugly.
yeah.
But beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right?
Oh, of course, absolutely. No, I'm always impressed. I'm like, man, that thing looks really cool, but geez, that's got to be.
I've seen
60,
some
75, 80 pounds easy.
I've seen some
Yeah,
that
you
need
need
forklifts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, crew rotaries.
I've toyed with the idea of going down the path of putting everything into a box, and haven't really done that for like POTUS stuff and field day and things like that. And the radio that I was going to do that with originally, when my wife got her general class license, that became her radio. So that's not going to happen now. Maybe we'll see, but at this point that's in there. So usually for me, it's just all in a Pelican case, and then I spread it out. There's pictures on my Facebook page of what I take when I'm doing the QRO ops, which it's a little hard rock and an 817 and stuff. With I got one of those 12 amp hour LifePo batteries from Amazon and built it up inside of a plastic ammo can from Harbor Freight. It actually works really well. I got a solar charge controller for it, and it'll I use it now to run my lights on my little camping trailer. And when I'm not using it for that, it's the QRO radio power supply.
Cool. All right. Let's see. There was a comment I wanted to. It says Fred Hughes, your friend of yours, says he is in the CW Ops class together with you, right?
Yep. And Fred, thank you for reminding me of that. I'm like, I know Fred's name. It's one of those moments anyway.
Well, so let's talk a little about that then, since he brought it up. A little bit about your CW experience in CW Ops, a little bit about maybe your first key. Maybe we talk a little bit about that.
Okay, I'll get my first key.
Yeah.
Keep going. I'm right here.
So Vince is going to go get his first key.
Vince's first key is right here.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Anyway, we're going to turn it over to you to talk a little bit about what you think, what your impressions are of the CW Ops class so far, and how you are with why did you take the class? How are you with Morse code and that type of thing?
CW Ops is a wonderful course, and I've heard the same thing about Long Island CW Club. And their approach is slightly different, but it gets you to the same end to be able to head copy. And that's today's, I am told that's today's way of doing things. Don't listen to code tapes. Don't buy an LP from the ARRL and play it back, which is what we did 40 years ago. For me, the journey into CW was one of necessity. At the time I wrote my ticket in 2002, Morse code was still mandatory in Canada. It lifted in 2004. But by 2003, I'd been bitten so bad by the HF contesting bug. I was spending oodles of time doing phone contesting that I knew I just had to get on HF somehow. So I dutifully got some software and paid for it and downloaded it and studied every day at lunchtime for half an hour with my sandwich at the office with the door closed. Every day is the key, folks, even if you do it 15 minutes. Just do it every day. And I got to 5 words a minute. So I show up at the examiner's house, my friend Barry, and I'm holding up now the podcast listeners can't see this, of course, but I'm holding up a computer joystick from days gone past. And this is an old computer joystick from an Atari and an Apple, and it looks like an old C.H. Hayes joystick. And so that joystick was my paddle key. And he says to me, okay, Vince, so what's your key? And I reach into my backpack and I pull this key out and he starts laughing. You can't be serious. I'm dead serious, I said. Well, you can't be serious. He puts a straight key in front of me. I never played with a straight key. Okay, yeah, you're right. You can't use a straight key. He pushes a Bencher BY2 in front of me. And I'm like, yeah, no, I can't use this either. He says, well, Vince, I cannot let you write your test with a joystick. And I said, Barry, you bloody well know the rules of RIC 1, Radio Information Circular -1, which is a distilled version of the Canadian regulations. And if I stand at the edge of your office and turn the light switch on and off in the correct cadence, I am demonstrating proficiency in Morse code. Okay, Vince, you got me. You can use the joystick. I made one contact. A guy, a silent key now, Bruce Beeman in Massachusetts, just outside of Boston he was. And my head hurt after 5 minutes at 5 words a minute, as anybody can appreciate. And I put it away. 5 years ago, with conditions being lousy and living in a super noisy neighborhood, I'm like, I'm going to get back into CW if it kills me. And it really does, because it's going to be about the only way I can make contacts besides FT8, which frankly, I quickly tired of. I know it's a lot of fun for people and I'm not dissing on it. It's something for everybody, right? Yeah. So I got back into it and I landed up at CW Ops. And with Fred and 3 or 4 other guys, we had a hoot as a group. And only recently, with Thomas Witherspoon's encouragement, have I picked up a key and actually started to use it. So Charlie, you were my contact on day 2 of trying to use it again. Today I made, 13 or 14 contacts. So that's day 3 in a row. So that's big. That's big news. Anyway, that's my CW journey.
Let me just share this real quick. This is my Twitter account, and it shows right here. He was waiting for a chance to work me, he says. I don't know if you can hear this. Can you hear that?
I do not.
Negative audio.
Negative audio. I got to click
So that's me at the candy store yesterday morning with an MFJ 551.
Yeah, right there. So this was yesterday, right?
This was yesterday.
Yeah. Actually, I wanted to put that back up for just a minute without the audio, because I wanted to. So what you have right there is, if I can zoom in on that, look at that key right there.
That is the MFJ 551 travel key. The movement on it is about a 1/4 inch. It's not a big alley. Yeah. It's really good for what it does as a mobile or portable key. So we can choose to diss on a brand or not. I'm not going to do that. I'm in front of the brand new FT710, which has some really interesting features in the way it separates audio out through the 2 speakers and a built-in crossover point. It almost sounds like stereo if you're sitting right in front of the radio. So I got excited when this radio came out, and now I've got to experience it firsthand, and I'm glad I've got one on order.
Yeah. I just wanted to interject. When I saw that, I had to bring it up because my first key that I ever owned was that key.
Oh my.
The MFJ. Yep, that one right there. I still have it. It's my backup key sometimes. So, I did probably 50 summits on the air activations with it. And then somebody teased me about using it, and it was good enough for me at the point. I wasn't like, super speedy or anything like that. And I will say, your contact that I had with you yesterday was awesome. I loved it. I knew your call sign and recognized it right away. And I didn't realize that when I first started working you, I got excited and sent a whole bunch of dits and daws, hey Vince, how you doing? It's nice, and then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. He's still kind of, not there yet. So I kind of backed off a little bit.
Well, and I appreciate you doing that, because I'm like, oh, it's a POTA or it's a SOTA. So I should hear the call sign 599 or whatever. And thank you, 73. And then I hear all this series of dits and daws, and customers are coming into the candy store. And then I hear the report and I'm like, oh, okay, the QSO's over now. I can say 73.
It was perfect. It was perfect. I think I actually might have it on video. We'll see. I ran out of, yeah. So anyway, Dan, Brian, anything to add for this, for the CW stuff before we move on to another topic?
I think that's great. Biz is doing a great job as getting CW. I'm still way behind on that, but that's really impressive that you worked 13 contacts today and several yesterday. So that's great.
Yeah, I'm always happy to hear when CW people get going in the CW as well. It's exciting. I myself, when I got back into the hobby, I didn't really think I was going to be doing CW. Now it's my favorite mode, and I barely plug in a microphone.
Yeah. Hey, Charlie, I think you're locally muted.
I am. Thank you. KG6LI Mark, great supporter of the show, says that the key is great if you replace the solid core, which I haven't done, but the solid core wire. But there you go. And then K8DRT says mine was the basic $6 plastic key from AES with an MFJ 9040 radio and a homebrewed double bazooka made from RG58.
That's
Nice.
great.
Yeah. All right, Vince. Well, so we talked a little bit about Go kits and MCOM a little bit. Anything else to cover under MCOM?
Boy, oh boy, just keep a cool head.
Okay.
And make sure that you're prepared.
Yeah.
Preparedness takes many forms. For me, it's about looking at the event site, if where possible, days ahead of time. Sometimes I drive the event site. Usually there's a public service events. Sometimes things go horribly wrong at public service events, and we hate to think about it, but I like to be ready for it. I like to be mentally there, and make sure that if you're in a position of leadership, that you're leading others as you need to do to ensure that they've got what they need and their expectations are set appropriately. If you're leading yourself, as all of us do, make sure that you understand what expectations are upon you, and you make sure you stay personally safe. Those are the best things I can tell you about MCOM.
Cool. All right. And then for CW, I think we covered about everything on that too. Kyle says it's becoming his favorite mode. I would hope it becomes everybody's. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And so let's move on then to glamping and RVing, because that seems to be another component of your exploration into the ham radio world. And
another theme.
Yeah. Let's hear about that.
Well, yeah, a while back I was handed this piece of kit, and I am the owner of a fairly unique military-style push-up mast. And it can be lifted on a column of air. I haven't done that modification yet, but you usually see these sorts of masts on the back of communications trucks. I own one. It's great. I can lift it with one hand. And so my RV, my little tiny 40-foot RV, is equipped with a trailer hitch in the back. So with a trailer hitch adapter and a bracket that somebody made up for me to hold it, I can just as easily drop that mast either at the back of my truck in the trailer hitch or at the back of the RV. And so that drove the need to figure out how to bring feed lines into my RV. So my wife and I love camping, and the dogs seem to have a great time doing it too. Camping has become different over the years for us. We're not on the ground anymore on an air mattress, and we're not running around with a motorcycle trailer behind us or in a truck camper. We've moved up to a fifth wheel. When I needed to pull the feed lines in, my RV was equipped with this really strange connector on the outside. You'd call it a 4P, 4C. Most people would call it a telephone line plug. And it's got a little, and there was a little one on the on the inside, and it turns out about a 1 foot run of wire at a desk. This thing's got a desk in it, little tiny desk. And so I thought to myself, well, gee, if I pull this out, I can bring in a piece of feed line. So out comes the Sawzall, and I cut a wider opening in the side of my RV, very nervously, I might add, through the heavily winterized walls. And now I have 3 feed lines that come in from the outside to that desk. 3 because I know I need 2, one for VHF, one for HF, although I'm usually just doing HF. And the third one is, of course, a spare, because 2 is 1 and 1 is none. And so with that, I can have a station inside my RV. The connectors are waterproofed. They're underneath, I used an electrical outlet cover that you might see on an outdoor plug. And that's how I set up for glamping. It's wickedly simple, and it sure makes it nice and easy, and I don't have to foul the screen and let bugs in to bring in my feed lines, right?
How do you usually, when you're camping or glamping, how do you usually approach your radio operations? Do you just kind of casually, between meals, or I mean, how do you do that? What do you do?
Yeah, that's exactly what I do. It's just catch as catch can. Karen knows that I love playing radio when I'm out in the field, and she grants me the space and the time to do that. She loves reading while we're glamping, so that's cool. We both enjoy a campfire together and taking the dog for a walk. So that's cool. But beyond that, my tools are always with me because that's how I roll. And a kit of RF adapters and my rig expert, whatever the analyzer is that I happen to own. Right now it's a rig expert. So I play with antennas and I play with wires and I put things up and down the mast, because at the top of the mast, there's always a pulley and there's always skinny rope running to the pulley. So I just run the antenna up and run the antenna down and drop it and trim it, run it back up again. I don't climb for anything. It makes it really quick and easy.
So
Sounds awesome.
do you have your antenna off the back of the trailer, or do you
Yeah.
have, okay.
Yeah, it's off the back of the trailer, and depending on the site, it depends where the end goes. If I have a rather generously sized site, Dan, I've got a fan dipole that stays in the trailer. It's cut for 80, 40, and 20. So there's 6 wires coming off this thing, and they're all 14 gauge wires. So there's nothing lightweight about this. But it performs like crazy because I've got a full size dipole up at 30 feet in the center, and I set it up as an inverted V. Lately, I've been messing around with Mike W09B's spark plug gear, spark plug antenna. That's what I've been using for all my activations lately. Because Mike says, Vince, you're going to run 100 watts through this 50 watt thing. Let's see where it breaks down.
I want to buy one of those. I still haven't got it when purchased yet, though.
It's a very cool thing.
Is
so,
it?
Yeah.
Well, it looks great. I almost bought one at Dayton, but then I held off because I was spending too much money there anyway.
Well, and I just bought a JPC7, which some would suggest is a knockoff of a buddy pole. It's a different design, but similar in concept. And I've got a Comet HFJ 350M, and some people love to hate on it. I can appreciate why. It's mostly coil. But I can set that up on a tripod with some counterpoise wires. So I carry a variety of antennas with me to experiment. Mike, K8MRD, ran an experiment saying, can a vertical antenna be directional? The answer is yes. It depends on how your counterpoises are arranged. And I saw a 20 decibel difference on a single counterpoise wire running in one direction versus 180 degrees when I was trying to do some wind link, for example.
You know what's interesting there?
I love experimenting.
I actually had the same experience. I didn't even realize this was after Mike put out his video, just right after. I hadn't seen the video yet, and I took a vertical for the first time ever, and I laid out my my counterpoises and kind of messed around with them a little bit and kind of realized the same thing just kind of by chance. So that's interesting.
Yeah. And so I love experimenting like that when I'm out in the field, which is why I carry an analyzer, which is why I carry my tools. Boy, if my wife was watching what I was doing, she would see me set up 3 or 4 antennas in a day. I get my Fitbit steps in just playing with antennas.
Cool. Mark asks, does Vince ever plan on using his camper to come to America to see the Stanley Cup?
Well, the Stanley Cup has been known to stay in Canada. I would be remiss if I did not point that out, along with a mandatory plug for maple syrup and Tim Hortons. But hockey is more the bag of Rod or Mike, VA3MW or VA3ON. Whoops, I got the call signs backwards, but my dear friends from the podcast more than me.
Yeah. Before we move on let's talk a little bit about the podcast next. But before we do that, let's wrap up here. Dan, Brian, anything else on the topics we've talked about so far?
I was curious on his Van Dyke poll, how much of how difficult is it for you to keep it organized and rolled up in your trailer and things. I've never found a good way that I'm really happy with to do that.
If you're building a parallel dipole where you're tying the elements together so that you just got one string to pull out on a side, Dan, that is absolutely a reason to harness your potty mouth. It really gets frustrating. And
It
so
is.
what I do is I leave the elements all separate. So I've got 3 elements per side, and I have paper cardboard spools about 4 inches in diameter and 6 inches long. And so it begins the laborious process of winding it up very neatly when I'm done, so that when I go to put it up next time, I grab the hook at the top with a clip or a carabiner, and I start hoisting the rope up, and then I let the wires drop on the ground, and I can tell by their length which one is which. And I hoist it up, and then I spread them out, and it makes it real quick to deploy. Still, it's heavy, but
Yeah.
it works real well.
Yeah, Charlie's seen what I can do to just a few wires, so he'd be amazed at what I could do to a fan dipole.
Oh my gosh.
I was gonna say drop the knife, Dan. Drop the knife.
Drop the knife. Yeah, there's always a knife handy. This is my favorite knife. This is made by Leatherman, actually. And it's a wonderful little knife, utility knife. So it's always with me.
Yeah, I'm not allowed to
drop
play
the
with
knife.
those.
I was
I'm
gonna
not
say, if
allowed
you
to
want,
play with
if
those
you,
things.
I say email it to, or mail it to Dan. He can tell you if it's sharp or not, and he'll send it back to you. Dan's real good at figuring out at detecting sharp things.
Perfect. I'm sure there's a story there.
Brian, anything else from you?
No, I'm pretty good right now. I figured I'd goof on Dan a little
All
bit
right.
there and bring up the knife.
All right. Well, so Vince, how did you get involved in the Ham Radio Workbench? I kind of know the history of how it started, but tell us how you came to be a part of the show?
Wow, quite by luck. So the pesky pandemic. I'm not going to editorialize about the pandemic and COVID and all the rest of that stuff.
problem.
I work in healthcare, so you probably figured out my opinion pretty quickly. But the thing that the pandemic allowed me to do, and many others, is reconnect with people over media like we're using right now, over telepresence software, Zoom, Skype, whatever, to get together and do things. And that allowed me to reconnect with my dear old friend Rod, VA3ON. Now, I did live in Ontario for a little while as a ham, but 30 years ago, Rod worked for Hewlett Packard, and I worked for a systems integrator, a company that's no longer around, that eventually got bought out by EDS, which is now no longer around. And so Rod and I were buddies back then, and we kind of lost touch for a little while. And so we came back together over Zoom. I got introduced to George, and I found myself a guest appearing on the Ham Radio Workbench, and the rest, as they say, is history. I like to say that I'm the layabout on the show. I feel like I don't do a quarter of what these guys do. And I feel like I'm the dumbest guy on the show sometimes, but it's a hoot. So
that's funny. But hey, you know what? I don't think so. But you have a great personality and fit the show well, I think.
Thanks.
So yeah, and K8DRT says the last Ham Radio Workbench podcast, number 164, will go down in history as one of my favorites.
I got to quickly look up which one that is.
I know it's just the last one. It's just the most recent one, but 164. But
well, we just recorded one. So the one with all those guys. Yeah, that was a hoot to have
Thomas
them
was
in
there, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm not all the way through that one yet. We'll see if I agree. Let's see. We got Richie's Radio Room. Yeah, he gave us $3. Thank you so much. We really appreciate the support. All right. Well, so the next thing is, let's see, what else can we talk about here? I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about the VE examinations remotely. That's an interesting topic.
Yeah, it is. Once again, this is a pandemic-induced thing. When the pandemic hit, I'd been an accredited examiner in Canada for a year when the pandemic hit, and suddenly I was watching on social media, and both in the US and Canada, people are going, well, I wanted to write my license, but how can I do that if we can't do anything in person? And I inquired with ISED, the Canadian Regulatory Agency, and said, how can we do this? And we eventually came to an understanding of how to run remote exams. And nobody's proven me wrong on this yet, but I'm pretty sure I delivered the first remote exam in Canada.
Oh, wow.
And I've been delivering them remote ever since. Now, with the help of the Anchorage Amateur Radio Club and their then chairman, who walked me through the process that they use, because, of course, Anchorage has been doing this longer than anybody else. Today we hear about GLARG. I'm a member of GLARG. Today we hear about ARRL. We hear about W5YI and others. But I thought the least I could do to pay it back was to help out with a VE testing team in the States. And of course, I have my license in the States. My brother, who's watching us this afternoon, hey bro, he lives down in South Idaho. My friends have land in Montana. Pre-pandemic, I was down half a dozen times a year. And I plan on doing that again. So it only made sense for me to get a US call sign. So of course I want to pay this back by giving my time back to help others get into the hobby through examinations, and by saying some words of encouragement and telling them that they've got a license to learn. Please don't stop learning, and explore the 1,000 rat holes that this can take you down. And it doesn't have to be an expensive hobby, but it's best if you have a wallet. And tell them all those, those really basic kind of startup things, so that people get a good footing in the hobby and they don't run into 75 meters and the medical ailment net and get turned off by it, right?
Yes. The medical ailment net. Yeah.
Dang, I just joined that too.
They're a bunch of friendly guys, I've heard.
Yeah. That's funny. Brian has a comment. I know he does.
I was just going to say, Charlie and I have discussed many times that that's going to be our plan once we get to the point where we're no longer mobile. We're just going to make up medical problems and talk about them on the air for hours on end.
Right. Once we're no longer B-list, once we're no longer B-list famous and we're just nobody, then that's our exit strategy. To just go there and talk about gout and stuff.
I've heard some amazing descriptions about. Well, I mean, man, people got to think about what they say before they say it on there. I mean, it's hysterical. Don't get me wrong, but my wife never gets on a repeater unless she's talking to me, and the reason why is, quote, all people do is talk about their medical problems and what they did in the bathroom.
So I would be remiss at this time if I didn't put a plug in for the Ham Radio LidNet. And if you go to the front page of my website, ve6lk.com, and Mike is a frequent guest, WO9B, on the LidNet. It's on DMR Talk Group 98003 on Thursday evenings, where we ask such riveting questions as, what is ruining ham radio this week? What are you drinking? And do you have any medical ailments you need to share with everybody else? So come out for the most fun you can have, poking gentle fun at ham radio within the limits of your license class and all regulations of the amateur radio service.
There you go. I was just going to say, congratulations for the remote VA examiner stuff, because you're giving back that way, but it sounds like you're giving back more than one way. You've got the LidNet as well. So awesome on you. That's awesome.
Hey, LidNet's not mine. I'm just a frequent attendee.
And a promoter,
LidNet,
it sounds like.
Yeah, and a promoter. LidNet is a product of KN3B and Reddit.
Yeah.
So
all right.
There we go.
Cool. All right. Well, we're getting close to time. There's a couple more things maybe we want to chat about, but we also did want to leave just a little bit of time to share some photos and a few things with the yesterday's Summits on the Air event. But we'll probably end up going over just a little bit. But that you are used to, I'm sure, because
apparently,
yes. So Gary K7 and UOU, he's a friend of ours here in Arizona. He says he just added the Workbench to the podcast library and he's looking forward to listening. So Gary, the podcast, why I made that jest of a comment about running late is because the podcast typically, how long does it run usually?
3 hours and 20 minutes, 2 hours and 55 minutes. We had one run an hour and 45 minutes and I couldn't think it happened. And we tell our guests 2 hours. Look, folks, just if you're going to listen to the podcast, we suggest you buy multiple properties to mow lawns. One of our listeners has commented, this one ran a little long. I finished cutting my yard. I cut 2 neighbors' yards and I trimmed out 3 more.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But-
especially the holiday one, the one at Christmas. That one definitely goes a little long, but I get plenty of good ideas of what I need that my kids can get me. So I just send those URLs to my children and let them fight about it.
Absolutely.
Well, we don't want to
always. Well, I was going to say, we always joke to say, and who's going to be the first victim of us doing the recording to buy something? And I introduced a tool at this last one. It's going to come out on, a couple of days time. And Mike Walker is already buying the tool before we finished recording.
There you go. That's the insight. Well, I do want to say this though. I mean, we're joking about it. It's a long podcast, but I would say you get a real meat into the ham radio community and into the all kinds of topics. So if you can listen, you're gonna have to probably do it in sections, but actually going around the bench and everybody talking about what they've got on the bench, that's more than half of the podcast, right?
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
And these guys, and hanging out with these guys, I've become such a better builder, and I've become more inspired to do things. So I'm really very blessed to be part of the team.
Yeah, I think everybody that listens to that show, becomes a better builder, and because there's just so much useful information about what people have done wrong and what did they do to correct it, and what went well for them the first time out of the gate. So it's great to learn new things from experience, and and it's just fun to listen to as well. So hats
That's
off
great.
to you guys and how you do the show.
Thank you very much.
Agreed. Yep. So 3-hour podcast. I think Josh, his is also with Josh and Leah, right? Theirs is 3 hours as well. So that's a lot of listening. And then I actually have a podcast that none of you guys probably even heard of that I listen to all the time. It's 3 hours as well, twice a week. 3 hours twice a week, and that is now why can't I think of the name? It's No Agenda. And it's not ham radio related at all, but it's the deconstruction of news media and just kind of very interesting, funny podcast. So I thought I'd just drop that one in as well because I enjoy it so much. So, all right, guys, let's see. Let's give Vince the floor to talk about anything else that he feels he wants to, that we missed or overlooked or that we want to elaborate on, and then we'll hop into some other stuff.
Wow, boy, I did not come prepared with a question for that. Question. I just have fun. I try to have fun with the hobby as often as I can. If you've learned something about me, I'm a shameless promoter. I love to see others do well. I try to help make sure that people get that audience, even if it's one person at a time. I network like crazy. People will come to me and say, hey, do you know so-and-so? Well, maybe I know so-and-so who knows so-and-so. And that's a carryover from my professional life, because we all are like one step away from knowing somebody. Hey, Vince, do you know somebody who's looking for a blah, blah, blah radio? I got one for sale. Well, yeah, maybe I do. Let me see if I can reach out and find something. That's what I do. And I just enjoy hanging out with people and seeing them do really, really well in the hobby.
Yeah. Well, great. And it shows. I mean, I can tell that that's the type of person you are just based on everything you're involved in. So congratulations to you.
Thank you.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about the Summits on the Air 10-Point Madness event to wrap things up. So wanted to share with you guys a few photos and stuff like that. Dan's going to lead us off since he has some stuff and he can share his screen. And then if you have anything, Brian, you can share it. I have a few things, but we'll talk a little bit about that while he's looking. Vince, this POTA thing that you just did one yesterday, you said, right?
Well, I did one today, and my buddy Dan V6TD and we went out Friday and we did POTA-thon 0930, and we will be doing POTA-thons with a date stamp because we're discovering these little pockets of unactivated parks in southern Alberta. So, watch for the hashtag on my Twitter feed.
So the field is right.
Look at the pretty deer. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, Dan, take the floor for a minute.
All right. Yeah, this, as I was saying, I did Saddle Mountain, and on the way up to Saddle, it's a full drive up, and it's a wonderful drive up there. And these were some of the deer that I met along the way as I was driving up. There's a nice big open field there. And this is looking kind of up the road, and it was just becoming sunrise. So I had to stop and just kind of hang out and look at the mountains and take a few pictures. It kind of sits in a little bit of a valley as you're driving up there. But this is northern Arizona, out by Flagstaff. And this is my where I got to play radio. This was my view. This is one of my favorite mountains in Arizona. And I didn't get to log too many. I only logged about 30 QSOs. and only about about 14 of them were actually on HF. This is Izzo, my Soto dog. This was his first outing, so he was pretty excited about getting out and sniffing the air. So he found his first tarantula, and he spent the day breaking in his nose. I think it's broken right now, but he enjoyed it. That's all I got.
All right. Do you have anything to share, Brian, at all?
Yeah, sure. I can throw some pictures up here and we'll talk about it. I can talk about towers. So let's see.
All right.
Share.
Apologies to the podcast guys.
screen.
Sorry about that.
These are lovely photos, and I didn't know that you had things that would kill you in Arizona like you do in Australia, like tarantulas
And rattlesnakes. And
my dog was very excited to see him, and he watched him for like 10 minutes, and the whole time the tarantula was not happy and just kind of had his legs up at him, but he sat there and watched him.
All right, so this is the Towers Mountain lookout. It's not manned. They don't man it anymore, according to Bill, the guy that I was speaking to. A few years ago, a fire tower observer decided she was getting too much radiation from all the RF on the hill, and they've not manned it since. We can all chuckle at that because we know how that works. But anyway, that's why it's no longer manned. They don't man it anymore. Whoop, hold on, too many there. That's another view of it. We got that. Oh, the heck is that? Geez. This is the view off the mountain looking down toward the Phoenix area. It's nice. It's got a really good clear view down, and you've got there's actually a lot of public safety stuff for the Phoenix area on Towers Mountain. That over in the distance there is FM broadcast on a mountain just opposite. It's on the same. You actually pass it on the drive up. You can kind of make out the road right there that leads up to the top, which is just terrible. This is a repeater site for a club that I'm a member of. And there's the FJ by the lookout cabin. You can see the elevation here. This chair, the reason why it's here, it's actually a traffic cone because part of my dipole is running through here, and I don't want a UTVer to blast through it if they came up. Oh, man, that's moving too fast. This is the station. That's what I was talking about. Here's my battery, the amp, and the 817. The microphone is actually plugged in. And then over here we've got the Magali key and my leg strap.
Which key do you use, Brian?
I have a single lever adventure. I just got it about a month ago, and I absolutely love it. It's a great key. Prior to that, I was using a Palm Radio Pico paddle, and it's a good key as well. But I started using a single lever at home, and I started using the single lever once I got above 25 because I found my fingers were not working properly with two levers above 25 words a minute. And I went to the single, and now I'm just trying to use the single all the time. And I really like the key. Here's a better shot of it. You can see it a little better in that, and it looks just like the dual lever, except the paddles are kind of fused together. So still getting used to the key, but it's been a lot of fun. I like using it a lot. I was actually running 50 watts. That's what the Hard Rock puts out, and that's a video of me operating. We won't show you that. And then here's the antenna. I kind of just strapped it up on the tree, and it's a 4-band link dipole, 10, 15, 20, and 40. And I feed this one with RG58 because I'm going QRO. And I think that is all I have for right now. So we'll go ahead and stop sharing.
Good. All right. I have a few as well. And so I'll share what I was doing. So there was a question, I think I have to scroll back up here, from Mark. Do you guys get much 2-meter activity on PODA? I would have to say no, not on PODA. We do. I've actually never got a PODA. I mean, they're SOTA contacts, but I also count them as PODA most of the time because I'm in a park at the same time as being on the summit. But not anything. I've never been able to do just a PODA only activation and get 2-meter contacts. So anyway, this view right here is coming down Aztec Peak. Looking off into, there's a waterfall to the left, but this is just kind of, I just thought this is what a stunning view this was. So I thought I'd take a picture of that. Let's see. Then we have, this is just kind of a picture of, let me see if I can get this here.
Hey everybody, just wrapping up operated ham radio and
Not
just
that one. It's this next one. I'm going to show you my setup here.
here's where I operated from. I brought the awning and set up a right up here is a J-pole antenna, and then strung off both sides is a dipole that you can see. And I
Oh,
brought
good thinking.
there. Let me show you what I have.
All right, so I'll go to the next one here.
It's somewhat of a mess under here, but it's all right. Here's my battery that I showed you on an earlier video. My bencher that I use for Morse code, and this is the radio that I use, is an FT897. And over here is the other radio that I used for 2 meters, although the 897 does 2 meters too. But this is the FT2900, and that gives you a little bit more power. And then you can see I just got a bunch of coax and cable everywhere because I was.
Yeah, yeah. All right, and then the next one is the view off the side.
Oh, that's a stunning vista.
I'll show you one more after this.
Yeah, that mountain has some wonderful views up there.
That's crazy views. Beautiful.
And then the rock chairs.
Yes, my favorite.
Recliners.
Just recliners for you guys
Get
watching the
around
podcast. They're recliners made out of big rocks.
Living in bedrock.
Big flat rocks. That's amazing.
And then a table also, a picnic table made out of it.
And there's a picnic table.
Yeah.
You definitely don't want to get caught up there if there's any lightning, though.
No. So let me just talk a little bit about my activation up there. I think for me, the most memorable contact, one of them, was a 327-mile contact with somebody in California on 2 meters.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
That
Had
was
the
a, with you had one with K6ARK, Adam. Yep. He was operating 100 watts. I was operating 100 watts. So, I mean, it was really doable, but I had a CW 2 meter contact with him, 327 miles. And it was just great. He had I don't know what his setup was. He probably has a video on it, I hope, but that was good. And then I had 8 DX contacts and probably 40 or so summit to summit contacts, many, I would say probably a 5 to 10 contacts summit to summit into VE land, into Canada, which was great. I got Malin and a couple of his friends, so it was pretty cool. So
I was gonna say just a quick one on I got the download on what he was using. So he had a 5-element beam. He didn't tell me the power. I was just running my D72 handheld into the roll up J-pole. And he said I was actually a solid 5.9 in California. Tower's a little closer, and it's got pretty much a clear view all the way there. But it was cool, absolutely cool for a 2 meter FM contact.
Yeah, cool,
Very cool.
All right, Vince. Well, and all the other guests there, we're going to wrap it up. I think you guys can go ahead and jump over to Frank's Tank Radio's live stream on YouTube. I think he's streaming right now. And we are going to hop off. Vince, it was just such a pleasure having you on the show. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much, Dan, Brian, Charlie, for having me. What an honor. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah.
Great to have you.
Thank you, Vince. Thanks for being here.
All right, guys, we're going to catch you later. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.